three big stories to break down today. We learned that Pochettino is prepared to make tough and bold decisions to cut our squad size down in time for next season. To move on, we learned the breaking news this evening as Brighton have turned down a third bid for Moises Caicedo, and to end things we have more updates around Mohammed Kudus. So my friends, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hit that like button. But before we move on, I have made a bit of a reaction video to our 1-1 draw against Newcastle. Something new I'm looking to maybe do a bit more of during pre-season. So if you guys want to see it for yourselves, or most importantly leave some feedback, you find a link above to that video in the cards. So my friends, let's hit this like button, share your thoughts and opinions, and without wasting any more time. So right now, let's discuss the breaking news surrounding Moises Caicedo. And as we've known for a while, we've had a bit of a transfer limit on Caicedo's valuation. That limit was around £80 million, and with our two bids that we've had rejected, they were 60 million and that was another 70 million. But today, Fabrizio Romano reports that we have made a third bid of £80 million, and Brighton swiftly rejected that. They didn't even take their time to even analyze the deal. They weren't tempted by it whatsoever. They said no straight away. So is this the end for our efforts to sign Caicedo? Well, maybe not just yet. Not just yet. As Romano states, we are still negotiating to try and find openings to get this deal over the line. There are a few things, of course, happening behind the scenes. Number one, Caicedo has been promised a move during this window, and it would kind of send a bad message, of course, if he did remain there for next season, because Brighton's whole policy is on signing the next big things that no one even knows about and sending them on for profit. So they can't affect that business model, but they remain very adamant that they want a fee of around 100 million. Tony Bloom, the owner of Brighton, is notorious for getting the values that reflect the worth of the players that Brighton produce. For me, it's a fair thing. I'm not one of those fans where it's oh, we're a big club, you have to bend over and bow down to us when we want to come in to sign your players. Listen, I understand the game you operate in. We can't just be a bit entitled in terms of thinking, okay, only one rule for us and different rules for everyone else. I'm not here to do that. I do think that Caicedo is that good that if we had to overpay to a fee close to what Brighton want, I think we have to do that. The thing that makes things quite difficult is that Brighton technically don't even really have to sell him. They'd be more than happy to keep him. This is why only big money can force them to sell. Of course, they have made the interest known in Conor Gallagher and Levi Cole, where if we included either one of these players, then we would have signed Caicedo a long time ago. But that's absolutely not happening, and Pochettino wants to work with both. Now, part of me thinks to myself, what exactly are our sporting directors doing? Because I'd imagine that it's Winston Lee and Stewart who are the ones actively negotiating with Brighton to get this deal over the line. Now, the cynical part of me that you guys do not have to agree with at all, and I'm putting my hands up, the cynical part of me thinks, listen, last January it was Egbali and Bowley. They were the heavy hitters that swooped in to help us sign your Enzos and your Mudriks. Is this an example of our sporting directors being a little bit out of their depth in terms of how they're negotiating a very important deal like this? And I say it's important because Pochettino clearly wants him. The players at this club clearly want him to come as well too. And for me, it's really this simple. Pochettino has always had that midfield enforcer. Wanyama, Schneiderlin, Hurlberg, etc, etc. And I feel like now that you signed for us, now that we place big expectations on success, we need to back the manager by signing the elite options for him to make his football ideas work to their absolute limits. And for me, Enzo and Caicedo has to be that midfield too. I don't care for overpaying 10 million or 15 for God's sake. We can offset the cost by using some of the talents that we spend ridiculous amounts of money on. I just don't really see any options in the market who are as this good as Caicedo right now. Of course, there are interesting names. Gordon Duaf, who's now at RB Salzburg. Very nice player. Of course, Amadou Onana. Romeo Lavia, who's probably set to sign for Liverpool right now. We've looked at Fofana of Monaco, but for me, these guys currently aren't giving me that elite feeling that Caicedo gives me. I think the way that he's acclimatized to the Prem, his build up from the back, how he dominates and wins that midfield as well too. Now that we've sold Kante, listen, we were very lucky to have one of the best players in that type of role playing for us, but that was the highest limits. No one else comes close to that. And for me, we have to do our damn well best to sign someone who can at least challenge that mantle left by Caicedo. I don't want us overspending on players that might not reach those heights or levels, but I do think Caicedo has that in his game. He's been a massive talent since this guy was a teenager, and I just think that we must continue to find an opening now. And reports have always mentioned this about a possible 85 million move plus add-ons to get this deal over the line. And hopefully that's the case, because number one, Brighton still look powerful, but the hitch is there's no competition for Caicedo, so they can't realistically expect 100 million. Whereas us, on the other hand, time is starting to run out. We have a massive game against Liverpool, and I'd rather have Caicedo on my field against your McAllisters, Szoboszlais, Lavias, etc., than anyone else, to be fair with you. So it's time we start quickening these negotiations up right now, because I don't want us missing out on Caicedo. They're my thoughts and opinions. Please share yours below. Is it time we give up now and move on to other targets, or do we make sure we secure this because we invested so much time to begin with? So that's the first story out the way. Now let's discuss what Pochettino had to say after his press conference in that 1-1 draw against Newcastle, and it was a very assertive press conference. I feel like recently now Pochettino is not here to mince his words. He's painting the objective for next season. He's painting the realities for next season as well too, and he's reminding us why exactly he was hired to begin with. So to start with things, we know that Pochettino is set to make tough decisions to streamline an unbalanced squad. And unbalanced is what Pochettino said, because currently we have 4 guys that can play as left backs. We don't have all the profiles we need in midfield, and we need to get that right winger /8 profile that Pochettino clearly wants. Right now, we have 29 players on this US tour, and some of these players include guys that could still be sold on in this window. You know, guys like Jalaba, Gallagher, etc., and of course, many youth players that could also benefit from loan spells too. Anyway, here's what Pochettino had to say. We are 29 players here, and the squad is massive. It is about creating a squad with good balance and people who can play and compete for their place. This is a big job and challenge for us in the transfer window, to build a good relationship and good balance. If players are not happy because they believe they are not going to play, we are going to find a solution with the club and fix the situation, which clearly means, listen, you'll get game time outside this club. It's not about things being personal. I completely understand this type of energy, and I think it's what's kind of needed now. We have to bring this focus back in terms of how we're moving as a football club. And you damn well know that Pochettino will know exactly every single issue that happened last season, from the players, from staff, from probably former managers that he's spoken to as well too. We know that Frank Lampard and Pochettino had a lot of conversations before Poch took over from him. So he will not be here to make those same mistakes and become yet another victim. It's not going to happen. Now to continue on, Poch says we need 22, 23, 24 players, with some younger, and that's it. I am so sorry, because maybe the decision will be tough, but we need to build a good and balanced team who want to compete for things. Chelsea pay me to choose 11 players. It is better they talk to me from now than to leave. If I don't play, I don't want to be here perfect. If I am here, I am committed. I am going to accept that you are the coach, and you're going to choose the players every single game. It is not a threat. And I'll be honest, I am more than fine with this type of clarity. This guy ain't mincing his words whatsoever. This is the deal now, going into the future. And again, when you just compare how much of a circus show it was last season, where the inexperience of the new boards, the ever-growing changes every single month, you know, an incredibly bloated squad that kept growing and growing and growing and growing. Like, you don't have seasons like this by accident. And you don't have seasons like this based on the decisions of just one person. It's a collective failure across the entire boards. So obviously Pochettino is set to be very ruthless in terms of cutting the squad down. I mean, let's not forget, we still haven't signed more players. We're still waiting for additions to come into the team, and that could mean that even more players could be made surplus requirements. We've heard him say for a long time now that experience is such a key thing that he wants, you know, Premier League experience. We haven't been living up to our end of the bargain right now. But I'll say this though, even though I understand the task at hand for Pochettino, we can still judge him on making the right decisions under pressure. Let's focus on the left back area. For example, we've got 4 players: Cucurella, Ben, Maatsen and Lewis Hall. Now I'm going to give you guys my opinion in terms of what we should do. I think number 1, Ben stays, he's number 1. I think Cucurella, and I'm being realistic, I would probably sell him, but I'm just not seeing a market for him at all. I'm not seeing that right now. I'd be very surprised if he was to leave near the final moments of the window, but right now I'm making an educated guess that he probably remains. So that's now between Maatsen and Lewis Hall. And I think obviously the fact that Pochettino has come out in public to really praise Maatsen for his intelligence, his versatility, his application to his ideas and training. I feel like he wants to keep this guy, knowing the fact that Pochettino can play Maatsen anywhere that he needs him. He could get minutes off the bench, he could start in odd positions, he's good enough to fulfill those roles, and I don't think that Pochettino will let a player like this leave that easily, so he is set to remain. For me, it's quite obvious, you have to loan Lewis Hall. And I don't say this because it's like, bias or whatever nonsense. Listen, I've seen players in Hall's position forever at clubs like ours, right? Big clubs keep these guys who are good enough to train week in, week out with the first team, good enough to play really well when they're given opportunities. But it's just like there's never any clear-cut pathways made for them. And in the end, a lot of these guys can grow a bit stagnant in the end as they're just hovering around the first team, getting the odd minutes here and there. And I do think right now, Lewis Hall can most definitely benefit from playing week in, week out first team football. And I think that is something we have to consider, because I think it's more realistic that for the 24-25 season, that's when Cucurella could probably go. And then Lewis Hall could come back in a much stronger position to really challenge that left-hand side. And who knows, in the next year or two after that, if Ben is phased out and that left-hand side is Maatsen and Lewis Hall, that could be the future at hand if you're willing to go on loan and play your football. Now, it gets a bit difficult because, of course, Lewis Hall hasn't agreed to sign a new deal right now. We have to be careful because Newcastle are making big efforts to try and sign him. Of course, they're trying to sign Tino Livramento. They want Lewis Hall. You can understand what Newcastle are trying to do. Two very good players. And I kind of feel like we can't allow this mistake to happen. So we have to be very delicate in this situation. But that's how I'm playing things out, in my opinion. So regardless, Pochettino will make some big cuts to the team. It has to happen because we're still waiting for additions to come. So I guess, my friends, share your thoughts and opinions. Who would you keep and who would you sell? Let us know below. And right now, let's end things very briefly by discussing the latest updates around Mohammed Kudus. Now, I'm going to apply a bit of context behind this story. Of course, we've agreed personal terms. We all know we've made direct contact with AXES to strike a deal, but he has lots of interests. Arsenal, United, Brighton and a few others. Obviously, Arsenal can't sign him unless they sell players first. And based on certain reports, they suggest that Arsenal would be Kudus' main preference to sign for. And I'm guessing that's because they also have Champions League football. On the other hand as well too, United are hovering behind the scenes. Brighton, ironically, can make a move if they sell Caicedo first. But as decisions are being made, Kudus is not training with Ajax at this point in time. And it does seem like right now, Ajax have accepted that Kudus won't be here anymore. So this is the latest news. Ajax won't be selling Kudus until they bring in a replacement first, which kind of just goes back to what they said to us during deadline day last year where we tried to sign Edson Alvarez. It makes a lot of sense, and I'd feel like it shouldn't be too hard for Ajax to be able to find the option first. This gives us a bit more time because I think right now the priority has to be on signing Moises Caicedo. It's been going on way too long. All clubs are currently in the US. This is the window of opportunity now to strike a deal and get this finalized. Once Caicedo is wrapped up, Kudus is next on the agenda. I feel like he is the best option right now that fulfills playing on the right wing / number 8 role or midfield role that we've seen Pochettino use with guys like Eriksen and many other players. I think he just suits that system down to a T. He's coming at the right age, right experience, right physicality as well too. These are two deals we can't mess up right now because I don't want to sign backup options or younger options, and that's clearly something Pochettino doesn't want. He doesn't want to work with even more younger profiles where these guys aren't the finished articles. And listen, you guys are Mr. Pro Youth, but there's also some reality to accept that we must get Champions League football for next season. And wow, that is going to be a tall order in my opinion. So my friends, they're the latest reports. Share your thoughts and opinions. And don't forget to check out my reaction video on our game last night to see all things Nico Jackson. So I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos.